What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to TOJ Talks. I'm your host, Will Parkinson, at Will Pilot on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. Friday afternoon, Zack Rosenblatt, post-wedding, pre-honeymoon, minicamp OTAs, phase 1 through whatever is over. We are into the true dead period of the NFL calendar the next 5 weeks, outside of, I'm sure, while Zach's on his honeymoon, we'll get both Garrett and Sauce extensions. They'll be screwed. But Zach, how you doing? I know you have a good article and a flight plan out as well.
Yeah, actually, so we use a different platform on our pod, and you can't really see the background. But I got this Joe Namath Funko Pop
Let's go.
pretty recently, and I was disappointed you couldn't really see it in the background of Flight Plan. It's because we were like more zoomed out. But I just wanted to shout that out.
Oh, there we go. I like that.
Added a little Jets love because we got AI over there, and then some Marvel stuff. But
yeah, we got. I like the little Arizona stuff. Unfortunately,
I got McHale Center. Yeah,
there's someone in the Discord that is obsessed with Ted McMillan. You like to see him week 7, I guess. So, I want to kind of just basically wrap up the offseason here. I mean, again, there's the phase of the offseason in June where between now and training camp, you'll get a bunch of vets will sign. A couple of them will sign a la Dalvin Cook in the middle of camp because they don't want to have to work out. But generally speaking, outside of maybe some defensive line moves, I guess theoretically Lazard, but I'm not sure on that anymore.
Yeah.
And maybe a receiver, but most likely outside defensive line, I think this is kind of who the Jets are going to be rolling with unless something crazy happens. I guess before we get into just minicamp and OTAs, as a whole, looking back at the last 3 months, what have you made of the offseason? I feel like I described it as boring on my other show yesterday, and everyone's like, oh, that's like, dude, that's a good thing. The Jets haven't been boring in a long time. Is that kind of what you felt like a little bit about this offseason?
Yeah, and I'm appreciative it was boring because I was planning a wedding. So, like not stressing about random Jet shit happening every day. Like they didn't even have any. I mean, look, there's still a couple months for nonsense to happen, but like not even like off the field nonsense really happened outside of maybe some like tweets they shouldn't have sent or whatever. But yeah, it was I think the story of this time of the year, like I said this on Flight Plan that we did recording on Friday that we did earlier. Like there's some people who like gatekeep OTAs. You and I have talked about this. Like obviously I know that the things that I'm seeing on the practice field aren't indicative of necessarily any big picture things. Like so when I say like, yeah, the defensive ends dominated the offensive lineman today, I'm not saying that means the offensive line's bad. I'm saying that in the reps that we watched, this is what I observed. So I like to disclaimer that because it seems like people just get their panties in a bunch. I don't know if that's PC, but when you like observe the quarterback stats, or I'm literally just like observing what we see in practice because I think it sometimes can like just kind of tell you what to look for in training camp and things like that. But broadly speaking, I think the story of these few months has just been Aaron Glenn, the way he runs his program, kind of learning how he's going to go about it, and the way the players have responded to it. Like, so that's kind of the biggest takeaways I've had, and it's a positive from my end. I've been impressed. Obviously, again, it's early, so like this ultimate, if we get to week 3 and they're 0-3, and culture's only good when you're winning. Ultimately, like I know the best. You say the culture's good when you lose too, but everybody's culture looks great when you're winning and doesn't look so good when you're losing. Like the Bengals culture doesn't look great right now. They're coming off a losing season. If they were coming off a winning season, or like a season where they made the playoffs, then maybe all this drama they've had wouldn't be as big of a deal, but they look like a mess right now. So, but yeah, Aaron Glenn, like I'm excited. I know you are too, because I saw you quote tweet me. I was like, when Steve Wilkes kind of like hinted at the fact that they were going to do tackling in training camp, it like perked my ears up a little bit because Salah's training camps, and he's not the only one. Like this isn't even to shit on Salah. Like the majority of training camps are really light these days. They do not do tackling really, and the tackling was a disaster for them last year, and that's probably not a coincidence. But even just like looking at real hitting and intensity, I'm excited to see what that looks like. He made sure to say like there's going to be a quick whistle. We have to like make sure these guys know we're not trying to like kill your teammates and stuff like that. But I'm looking forward to that, and that's kind of like the general vibe. Like it was intense for a spring. It was still light practices broadly, but it was intense enough that like Michael Carter after Thursday's practice was like, he was surprised that they did like a more fun practice because so far it's been all about competing. So I've been encouraged by like the Aaron Glenn of it all. And that's kind of the most important thing at this time of the year.
Yeah. I joked with a few people that I was like, there's no shot Glenn cancels Thursday. And then essentially did like a classic tough guy coach thing and like made everyone warm up, and then it's like, just kidding, guys, you're good.
Yeah.
A couple of things I wanted to quickly touch on before we jump into like just specifically how some guys looked. The training camp thing I think is extremely important. I remember talking to guys last year, and I'm sure you had the same kind of interaction where during the week they'd wear pads all the time, but they didn't really hit ever. It was a very like, I don't know what we're really doing here. We're just kind of in full pads to be in full pads practice. And then I vividly remember the first inter squad scrimmage, they actually hit, and everyone got hurt. And it was like, everyone's getting hurt, which always the first day when you fully hit, guys get banged up. It's just the nature of the sport. High school, college, Pee Wee, it doesn't matter. But I remember sitting there being like, they haven't hit at all when I was here 2 days ago. And then I get to the inter squad scrimmage, the green and white, whatever, and they ran like 120 plays and we're like full speed. I'm like, what the fuck is going on? Like, and I just remember sitting there, I'm like, it's hot as balls.
Yeah.
They're now, it's like, this feels like a training camp practice, but nothing before that had felt like a camp practice. So I think to your point, too much focus in today's NFL, and I get why, is how do we get guys to week 1 healthy? Yeah. That's fair. But the problem is if they stay healthy for 17 weeks.
Yeah, I was going to say, they're also not, the focus isn't on getting them healthy to week 18 as much, because it's kind of hard to do that when.
Yeah, you look at,
it's an interesting thing because they are trying to protect the guys from concussions and health and all that stuff. And I don't know if there's like a scientific way to even figure out if it's better for them to hit now so they're toughened up for later, or like, I don't know what the best method is, but like they're not going to hit every day in practice, I would say, or in Glenn. Like it's not 2-a-days. It's not, full on hitting. Like I covered Joe Judge his first year, and they were doing like, I think it was the Oklahoma drill, like just full on hitting each other, and a dude got a concussion from it. Like it was like old school shit, but it was kind of fun to watch. Not the concussion part. But yeah, so I'm curious to see what that looks like, how the players embrace it. They do have some hard hitters, guys who, like a Quincy or even Andre Cisco, like these guys that are going to fly full steam ahead, and there's probably going to be a lot of fights with the tackling going on because it's teammates on teammates, and that's what happens. But you just want to see an intense training camp. Like Saleh, we don't need to go too deep into Saleh because we've covered this, obviously, both of us various times. But like I think he was always trying too hard to make the players happy, but like the players will be happy if they're winning. So
yeah, they respect you when you put them in a situation to be successful on game days. And as much as it's nice to be like, my goal is to go get guys paid, how many guys really got paid? I guess by other teams this offseason they got paid. But generally speaking, like if you don't win on the field and you're not put in positions to be successful, and one of the ways you need to be able to be put in a position to be successful is to get yourself ready for a season. And it's really hard to get Justin Fields ready in a new offense if everything is so scripted to like put Justin in bad situations and like let him figure it out. He's not a rookie. Put, I don't know, Will McDonald in a situation where he's going to get double teamed at times, and like he has to figure out a counter to his spin move, and like little things like that I wonder if have been utilized enough. Like Sauce, like we're going to make you travel during camp with Garrett and like truly travel. You're getting no help, and if you get burned, like it's going on the team. Obviously not in like a bad way, just more of like game scenarios and what's really going to happen on Sundays. I guess let's touch on Garrett and Sauce before we get into some of the guys that kind of stood out or didn't stand out for lack thereof. I've talked about it a million times. I know you've talked about it a bunch. Like, I think it's a matter of when. It's not a matter of if. At this point, with both these guys getting extended, I know Joe talked about this, and Ian Rappaport referenced this last night. It wouldn't be shocking if this is kind of like I don't know, maybe it's the first day of camp or at some point over the next 5 weeks of like, Sauce lives here and Garrett's here all the time. Like a joint, hey, these are our 2 building blocks. The skill positions, they get extended together. Like just general feeling, I guess, around the Sauce and Garrett stuff, because I think people are starting to get like antsy with them getting extended. It's going to happen. Just like there's a process here.
Yeah. This is a first for us. I mean, they did give Jamie and Sherwood big money, but he was a free agent. Like this is going to be the first test for like the Muji Glenn regime, how they approach this stuff. Because they technically, obviously, I mean, the people who are anti-pay them now are like, you have their control for 2 years, blah, blah, blah. But I'm kind of in that line. Like I can't see how it would make sense to only sign one of them and then like try to figure out the other. Because I can't imagine that will go over well with the other one necessarily. I think they both want the other one to get paid. Those 2 guys do love each other, and Sauce referred to them as like talking to each other about how they feel like they're the building blocks for the Jets and all that stuff. I think they need to get this done so it's not a distraction. Maybe before training camp, maybe before the season. My prediction would be that it happens. I don't say that with like complete confidence because again, we just don't know.
Yeah.
Number one, does Muji want to pay Sauce as the number one corner? How do they value Garrett financially? Number two, does Woody sign off on it? Like these are all factors, obviously, but I think you get ahead of it. And then once you have those guys locked in, then as the season progresses and whatever, you can start thinking about, okay, Breece is looking great. Maybe we start those convos. Jermaine, John Simpson, whatever. Andre Sisco, one of these one-year guys. Like if any of these guys are playing above their current contract, it makes sense value-wise to get ahead of it. But you need to prioritize Garrett and Sauce first. So I lean towards them getting paid. I think Sauce will be the number one corner. I think Garrett will probably come in somewhere in the top 10, making, if not 30, around there a year. Yeah, I'd say before the season, ideally, but not guaranteed. But I think, best case scenario is, to your point, they get it done before training camp. Then they can do a joint press conference at the beginning, kind of like they did with Quinnen, and celebrate it as like, this is our historic 2022 class. These are our cornerstones. We're going to bring them out together, celebrate this, and then we can get on with our day and our season.
Yeah, I think to the people that are like, wait, if they would have gotten ahead of Sauce 2.5 months ago and before the Texans signed Stingley, he'd be a $25 million a year player. And you'd be looking at Derek Stingley going, wow, Sauce is underpaid. Like that's what you'd be, again, like I think it's a lot more difficult when it's a new regime and they probably want to get in the building first, and ownership wanted to get their information and reporting on Sauce in terms of how he compares to the rest of the league, but also Aaron Glenn probably wanted to be able to sign off. Darren Mushi probably wanted to be able to sign off. Like they've never been around Sauce outside of these little different instances, playing them, etc. So I agree. I think Garrett. There's another one, Terry McLaurin, that's wants an extension. He was a 3 for $69 guy. Terry wants a new deal, which is pretty seamless in my opinion in Washington, just because he's going to be 30. Like, really feels just like get a 3-year deal done and call it a day. But again, that's another guy who similar stats in terms of McLaurin's like an 1,100 yard a year receiver. He's older, but what if Terry gets 33? That's annoying. Now it's like Garrett's going to want 33.5 because that's just the way it works. So I just think it's advantageous. And then, hey, AVT play 17 games again, and then we'll talk about it. John Simpson, like now it's 2 or 3 years in a row. Now we'll pay you $12 or $15 million a year. Same thing you mentioned with the Ciscos of the world. Breece, I think it's like you're getting tagged probably whether you're on the team next year or not. So I guess in terms of guys who stood out, I guess you mentioned Fields yesterday a bit. I'm sure you guys talked about him. I know you talked about him in the article. Seems like throughout the summer or throughout the spring, he got better as time went on. Naturally, people do that when they're in a new offense. I joked about this yesterday. Yes, Justin holds the ball. I'm not going to give him a hard time of holding the ball in a new offense when there's no pads on, because that's what guys do. Everyone does it. What'd you make of Fields and maybe the maturity or growth from March or April until now?
Yeah, what I said in the article is that I didn't have him as stock up or down because I think it's him specifically. It's too early to evaluate, and also he's kind of like where we thought he would be. He shows flashes of like real serious potential. Like from minicamp, he had some throws. He had a throw to Garrett, a deep ball, placed it perfectly where nobody else could get it but Garrett. He had a touchdown pass to Josh Reynolds that was really good, and he's had some other quick throws, flick of the wrist, slants, things like that where he's hitting guys. He's also had some moments where he holds onto the ball too long. He throws it above a guy's head that's open, makes a wrong read or forces a throw. I thought it was, some people made fun of this, and I get it because I think Saleh used to do this with Zach Wilson, but Aaron Glenn was like, the moment for me was when he got out of the pocket, saw nobody was open and threw it away. Like that was his favorite throw of the day. And so that kind of gets mocked a little bit because it's like, why was the best throw a throwaway? But there's something to be said because he's had issues with that in his career. So we were talking about training camps being more intense or less intense and all that stuff earlier. That's why I'm curious if Aaron Glenn plays Justin Fields in the preseason. I think there's obviously risk involved with that, but I think he could stand to use those reps, frankly. So I'm curious to see what that looks like. But I'd say overall, I'm encouraged by him. I still need to see more, though. Like we still need to see him making progress. Like I'd say his throwing delivery is a little more like deliberate than I realized. Like it takes him a little long. He's not going to throw it as quick. Nobody throws it as quick as Aaron Rodgers, but like his delivery is in such a way that he's not going to make a lot of quick throws, like right after you snap the ball kind of thing. But his athleticism is so obvious. They haven't had a quarterback with that level of athleticism. He can get out of the pocket. What I'm curious to see is, does that become a crutch? Does he, if the first read's not there, if the second read's not there, does he immediately try to run? I mean, maybe sometimes that's the right move, but so still a lot of questions. But I think it's clear the potential is there. I believe in Tanner Engstrand's ability to put him in the position to succeed. So I say arrow pointing up, but there's still a lot to prove.
Yeah, I think with Fields, it's the arm strengths. He's got a missile for an arm.
Yeah,
like, and
sure.
I think something they didn't utilize last year. And again, this is, I mean, I'm not just going to come on here and shit on Rodgers, but in this case, like it's valid. Rodgers was horrendous throwing the deep ball last year. It's something he's always been amazing at. I think it's the thing that bothered me most of anything last year. And I know we've talked about this a lot. Like he couldn't throw the ball more than 25 yards for a while. And it's not like his arm was dead. He just couldn't, like, there wasn't any confidence throwing the deep ball. He would overthrow, he had obviously the famous overthrow against Seattle and Houston, and there's pick sixes or, bad things kind of occurred afterwards. But Garrett, even with like, is open one or two times a game, you can get him open. Like Arian Smith's biggest role this year is going to be running 9 routes, running 7 routes. So do you feel like, you mentioned Tanner Engstrand, Garrett in the slot, getting Brees as a pass catcher and doing some 2-back stuff, 3 tight ends on the field, whatever it may be. I know you've talked a little bit about it, but I think there's reason to be encouraged. And everyone I've asked in that Jets building over the last 2 months, even throughout the draft process, free agency, was like, his answer to things wasn't, I can't use this guy. It was, I'm going to find this role for him. And I know that sounds very like cheesy or whatever. I think that's a huge deal. The Jets for years have been like, nope, that guy doesn't fit, or we're going to put him in this spot, even if he's not. Like Elijah Moore is going to run as an outside receiver, even though he's 5'7" and can't catch a jump ball. But we're just going to have him be outside. I felt like, again, we have to see it on Sundays, but at least there's promising signs of like, let's get creative. Arian Smith's good at 3 things. Like, let's put him in a spot to be good at those 3 things, as opposed to try to make him something he's not.
Yeah, I mean, they're all saying the right things, and the main thing that, the main thing that's encouraging is that, like, the idea, and it's a very simple concept, but I think the best offensive coordinators and coaches, like, you fit your scheme, you fit the scheme to the players, not the players to the scheme kind of thing. And I think the Jets, I mean, Hackett couldn't, figure out how to put peanut butter and jelly on a piece of bread, but without somebody like doing it for him. But so like it's such a low bar too, that maybe that's why I'm like so bought in on Tanner. But I think the thing that people forget with him, like you say first time play caller, like in the NFL, but it's not the first time he's called plays. And I think that's notable. Like I know it wasn't at the NFL level. He did it in college for like 10 years, and he did it in the XFL for 1 year. Like that's not nothing. So he like has the experience of in under pressure, and he's really young, by the way. When he was at San Diego, he was like 20 something years old when he was the play caller there. So that's why between that, the things he said, the way they talk, like they're like, we're getting Garrett Wilson the ball. He knows going into the season that Brees Hall can catch the ball. It's not going to take till week 9 to figure that out. I have concerns about maybe like the skill position talent level, like outside of Garrett and Brees, as I'm sure you do. Like Mason Taylor, I'm high on. He is 20 years old, coming to the NFL for the first time. He'll go through some bumps. Josh Reynolds and Lazard should not be your number 2 receiver in any scenario. Like I like Reynolds as like a 3 or a 4, but for number 2, not so much. Arian Smith could be fun. Who knows about the other guys? But I feel better about the creativity. I feel better about the run side of things. I think they're going to be really good at running the ball. I think they're really building an offense around running the ball. Like I've been saying this, they were last in the NFL in rushes last year. Would not be shocked if they were number 1 at the end of this year. Like I think they're going to run. There's going to be games where they're going to be playing from behind, probably a decent amount, but I do think they're going to run the ball a lot. So I believe in the infrastructure. It starts with Justin Fields ultimately, and then if he works, then everything around him will work too, I think. So that's why, like, I know a lot of people were mad about the Athletic Football Show, Robert Mays and Derek Klassen. They had the Jets as like the worst supporting cast for any quarterback in the AFC. if you listen to it, they say like we absolutely like could be wrong as if you look back at this and like when they started out they didn't know, but if you go point by point, like something needs to go right. If you remove Garrett, who's I think as much of a guarantee as anybody on the offense, that's not even a hot take. You could argue there's questions like everywhere else. Like Brees is coming off a bad year. Like I think he's going to have a bounce back year. We don't know if he will. The offensive line, like I think Olu's going to take the next step, but he wouldn't be the first young offensive tackle to not take the next step his second year. We don't know what Membo's going to be as a rookie. I think they were a little harsh on the interior offensive line because I think it's pretty good. I guess your mileage may vary on if Tippmann or Meyer start at center, but AVT and Simpson, I think, are really solid guards. And the tight end position, again, high on Taylor. We don't know for sure he's going to be great right away. So a lot of questions, a lot of things they need to scheme up and build up. But yeah, I think there's reasons for optimism at the very least.
Yeah, I think this will be a team that's pretty fun to watch on Sundays. I just don't know, like, I don't know if that means wins. I mean, I'm not going to – I've said they're going to go 9-8 for the last 4 months, so I'm not going to change that anytime soon. But you could tell me they went 5-12, but, like, wow, I saw a lot there that actually makes me feel, like, good. And there could be an 8-9 team that you're leaving, you're like, I don't know how they're – like, the 2019 Jets were terrible. Yeah. They went 7-10. That doesn't mean they were better than, another year where they were 8 and whatever. The point being, like, if they're well coached and these young guys look good, that's really what matters. Like, yes, Fields being good would be the icing on top, right? Like I can't emphasize that enough. This is going to come down to if Glenn's a great head coach and if Justin Fields can be a competent, the 17th best quarterback in the NFL,
absolutely,
they're going to be really fun to watch down the stretch. If Glenn's okay and Fields is like pretty bad, he's the 29th quarterback. Yeah, we're probably going to be talking about drafting a quarterback and hey, they're going to they trade this guy and then whatever. The point being, like, there's just so much variance there. It's kind of hard to predict the Jets right now. Mason Taylor might have 500 yards and 50 catches, and we're like, dude, like, he's the best tight end in the division. Or he has 20 catches and he's a 20-year-old, and that's what happens when you're a second-round pick as a 20-year-old. Was there anybody to you, Joe put this out on Twitter before, of guys that could be surprise cuts, kind of a transition of, like, maybe guys that are kind of arrow pointing down. Gibson, Corley, Tony Adams are just names that are guys that either are bigger names or played a lot the last couple of years in different roles that I'd be like, if they didn't make the team, I would not be shocked at all. In fact, like 2 or 3 of those guys I would say would have to have pretty good camps to make the team, Corley specifically. What do you make of any of those guys or any other guys that stood out to you of like, hey, new crop of roster in here, new coaching staff, and like they're running with the threes? Or I know it's Minicamp, so everyone before it gets aggregated. But just in general, there are guys that you're like, ooh, like they played the last couple of years, and does Zaire Barnes exist? I don't know.
Yes, that's a funny one because Quincy wasn't practicing, so I think it was Zaire that was getting some reps. The linebacker room depth is pretty concerning, by the way. I'm just like thinking of it. I feel like everybody's just kind of pretending that that's not the case. They even talk about it like they only have 2 linebackers, but maybe they like the rookie a lot. I don't know, Kiki Maui Go or whatever. Yeah, like just coming off what you're saying. I mean, Corley, I talked about him a bunch on the flight plan. Like he has a lot. He's as much of a question mark as anybody, and it's as important of a training camp as anybody on the roster as him. Because I do think there's talent there, but he has to prove to this new coaching staff that he is willing to do the work and be what they need him to be. Gibson, you mentioned. The one that jumps to mind for me is Leonard Taylor, just because of like the kind of expectations and love that the fan base has like heaped upon him since last year. He showed flashes last year, but he didn't play a lot. And there's, in theory, you look at what they did at defensive tackle, didn't draft any, didn't make any major signings. So like the takeaway, like taking a 6,000 foot view or whatever, was like, okay, maybe there you believe in his potential, but I didn't really see them using him in a way that makes me think that they're plugging him in as a starter or anything. Like Byron Cowart's a starter. And, I noticed a couple undrafted. I noticed Fatorma Mulba from West Virginia more than I noticed Leonard Taylor in camp. So, and they gave pretty good money to him. They gave good money to Peyton Page. I think there might have been another defensive tackle they signed undrafted. They have J2 Fele. think that's all the
Nandi
other
too
ones.
from the Chiefs.
Oh, Nadi. I keep forgetting about him, actually. I keep forgetting that he exists.
Probably the highest.
Not in a bad
He's
way,
probably the
but
highest floor guy. I just don't know what the ceiling
he could
is.
just be like a solid rotational run
Yeah,
stopper.
like can you be
Like
the fourth?
the path to Taylor is being a pass rusher because they don't really have like a pure pass rusher at defensive tackle. I think Cowart showed some flashes in camp, but Taylor would be one I have my eye on.
For Leonard Taylor, I feel like I think the traits are there to be good enough to be an NFL player. I don't know if the down by down consistency mentally is there yet, and I don't know how they get that to change. He's an undrafted guy for a reason, and he's got talent. Like you see it these flashes, which is what those guys are usually coach killers because you keep relying on the talent. And there's such peaks and valleys, but hey, can you if you play 20 reps instead of 5 being good and 15 whatever reps, can we get you to 10 and 10? So at least it's like a plausible. Just to your point, I would have tempered expectations for Leonard Taylor. I think he could make the roster for sure, and like he has a unique skill set, but I don't know. I literally just don't know with him because I don't know what you're getting down by down.
Well, I think they trust the other guys more than him right now.
Yeah.
So, like I'd call him a bubble guy. I don't think he's someone like if I was doing my 53 right now, I don't know. I don't know if he'd be on it. I'm not 100%. I might have to do one in the middle of before training camp, maybe.
Big grease with a nice beard.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, no, that wouldn't go over well. And to your point earlier, like there's always a possibility they bring in a veteran or somebody that gets cut or something. They did sign a couple of guys. I don't really know yesterday, but yeah. So Taylor's one I have my eye on. I'm trying to think. There's not really any other obvious, like maybe like a Jarrett Bernard Converse, but that's not like I don't think that'd be a shocker or anything. Like if Anders Carlson lost the kicking battle, I don't think he will, but like if he were to lose it, maybe he would be one. But yeah, it's like Xavier Gipson, Corley, Taylor. I know you've said Tony Adams.
I just think of Adams as like if he doesn't tackle well all camp and he's like
I don't see him getting cut, but like I see your point too because they drafted somebody obviously, or like if they brought in another safety that they like a veteran or something.
Yeah, he's just one of those like if he's on the team, great, and he's starting, like wouldn't be shocked. And if you told me he got traded for a conditional 7th next year to San Francisco, like also wouldn't be shocked. It's just one of those like guys. It's like I don't know, like he looked good in camp last year, and then the season got here, and he was just like really difficult to watch from time to time. To be honest, it's I guess the one question I want to ask you are 2 things before we wrap here. One, I talked a lot about the defense and specifically the corner room. I feel like is better than people are giving it credit for. I think I'm just really high on Azaria Thomas, and I'm high on the fact that Stevens can be a average NFL player, either at safety or at corner or wherever he ends up lining up. I know Connor and Joe talked a little bit about like, hey, did the Jets do some stuff where they get creative and have Michael Carter go back at safety and play Malachi Moore in the slot, or Stevens in the slot and Azaria, just get creative with like best 5. General thoughts on that potential idea and just the secondary as a whole, because there's potential for it to be a really awesome unit. There's just a couple of guys where like they need to either hit the ground running and more, or Azaria Thomas and or Stevens and Cisco are guys and Adams, I guess, who need to return back to like 2023 form to be for this unit to be really, really good. Even Michael Carter, to be honest, he needs to play like healthy 2023 Michael Carter.
No, I think Michael Carter you could argue is a question mark just based on he was so hurt last year.
Yeah.
He's healthy now, and I think they love him, but and Stevens is also a question mark. So I'd say there's more question marks in the secondary than the last few years for sure. But yeah, to your question earlier about like the idea of mixing and matching, like if I believe in any like position group coaching wise on this staff, it's the defensive back room. Like they just have, Dre Bly, Chris Harris, who's kind of low key, like a really popular name around the league. I think he's somebody who's really
that was one of the better moves and
better hires.
You talked about it all.
It was weird that the Titans just let him go, I think. But yeah, you have those guys. I mean, Steve Wilkes, great coach, and Aaron Glenn, obviously defensive back developer. So I believe in their ability to mix and match. I think they're going to be creative on the back end. I think they're going to send a lot of these guys on blitzes. So whoever's the most athletic and most able to do those kind of things will be on the field, I think. And so, yeah, I could see scenarios where they try and just get the best, like the idea with the offensive line. You want the best 5, you figure out the positions. I could see them feeling that way about the defensive backs. Ultimately, like the base corners will be Brandon Stevens, will be Sauce, Michael Carter, Cisco, and then whoever wins the other safety job. I have a feeling maybe it'll be Malachi Moore, but I think he still has to win it. So I have my eye on that. But yeah, the two young guys are the X factors, Malachi and Azariah. He looked really good in camp. It was mostly against backups, though. I'm curious how they look in the preseason. And I wouldn't be surprised if by the end of the year, they're both like full-time starters kind of thing, just because I think they have the talent. Thomas, I think they drafted with the idea to be more of a project, but who knows? We'll see. And I'm curious how Stiggers looks in his second year with some development with a good coaching staff. They were really high on him last year. I think he was really good in training camp last year. He's not guaranteed a roster spot by any means, but I'd be curious to see how he looks in camp as well.
Yeah, he was another name I was going to mention when we were talking about like bubble guys of just like there's the three JVC, Stiggers, and Adams are all like the late round or undrafted guys that the former staff loved. This isn't the former staff, so it's just you're going to have to like it's just a different animal, and certain coaches value different things. I would say that the biggest advantage that guys like Stiggers and JVC have is at least they can play safety or corner. I guess Adams can too. I don't know in the NFL if he's his ability to play corner would go over that well. I guess last question here, kind of as we transition, is there anything? Who's like one or two guys you're looking most forward to seeing? I know we talked about Fields a little bit in the Aaron Glenn training camp. Is there like one or two guys you're like, I have my eye on? I forgot to mention Jermaine again. I know talked a little bit about it and said, week one still the target. Probably going to start on PUP, which makes sense. I don't think we're going to see Jermaine in team drills until like, I don't know, August 15th, something in that range where it's like joint practice season. There's one or two guys that you're really excited to see in joint practice or no. Well, yes, joint practices, but just in training camp in general.
Just a few that jumped to my head. I mean, Will McDonald is always really fun to watch in training camp because I think offensive linemen have a really hard time with his moves, especially in that setting when they're not doing full hitting. I'd say Arian Smith, I'm excited to watch, see how he looks, that speed, how many reps he gets with Justin Fields. Kind of like a low-key one is Tyler Johnson because I didn't really get to watch that much of him. And he's someone who's good at contested catches as the scouting report on him. So I'm curious to watch him and see if he's a legit factor in this wide receiver room or if he's maybe more of a bubble guy than we realize. I mean, Mason Taylor, just kind of seeing him in action when the reps matter. And even like a low-key one, and I'll just throw him out there because he was in my story, was Jamal Pritchett. I think he's pushing Xavier for that punt returner job. It's kind of, I was talking about this with Tim McMaster on Flight Plan earlier. It's kind of like a similar path as Xavier Gibson a couple years ago, like small school, 5'8" kid, really fast, fighting for a returner job. And he might be the one to take Xavier Gibson's job too. That's just the way the NFL works. You cycle through it. But he's someone I think could be like one of those like training camp darlings this group likes. And some of those UDFA defensive linemen I mentioned, I'm intrigued to see if they kind of can stand out as well.
Yeah, no, Pritchett's another one that's a guy like, I think the biggest, Gibson's going to have to show he can catch punts throughout the preseason, like catch them. He had fumbling issues. He also had issues just catching the ball. Nothing defensive coaches hate more than your feet on the 10-yard line and you back up and either catch the ball or let it go and it gets pinned inside the 2. Like there's nothing more frustrating. And
actually one more I'll say is Braylon Allen, just because year 2 should be stronger, should be faster. How he looks if they're doing tackling.
Much more decisive too, don't you feel like? I feel like just like get downhill and go. Like he's not somebody who needs to pitter patter back there and try to make a road miss.
So, because I think they want to do it at the very least a 2-headed monster, if not a 3. So, I think Braylon is a crucial piece of this offense. It seems like they're really trying to build the Lions offense in their own way. And so if he's the David Montgomery, can he show us more? Because I was really high on him out of training camp last year and he didn't really show anything during the season.
Yeah.
But he was a rookie. So I'm curious to see how he looks in camp.
Another couple guys I'll just give. Jalen Simpson's one. I'd be interested to see what he kind of looks like. Dean Clark, I know you had on your pod. Just
great kid.
Again, the safety room is pretty open. Like a lot of young guys and unproven guys. I want to see it. Stone Smart, one guy. Like I talked about him a little bit in pod the other day of just like bold predictions. Like I don't know what he's going to be. I really have no idea. But if you told me he had 5 touchdowns this year and had 15 catches, like wouldn't be shocked. That's just kind of the way.
It's a good one.
And then Brandon Smith had a really nice OTAs from all accounts. frankly don't know that much about him. So I just saying he's a name that I can see, kind of being tweeted.
I will say
a
a sign of a guy like that is doing well is multiple times I kept forgetting. I forget what number he is. 17 maybe,
something like that,
or 87. Yeah. There's multiple times where he made plays where Andy Vasquez and I were like, "Who is that?" And then we had to look at the rest.
That's a good
Brandon
sign.
Smith.
Usually, you want to be able to go into camp. No, but I'm on the same page as you. And then again, like it's going to come down to Fields and Glenn and Engstrand. Specifically those three guys. I think. Again, I think we're all excited to see the rookies too. Like I want to see Membu actually in pads.
Good one.
Just as the PSA signing off here, I saw a lot of people freaking out about Membu the other day. Guys, offensive linemen without pads on are virtually useless to watch. Like everybody, it's just impossible to understand. Like they can't do anything. So just please take it with a grain of salt. Zach, appreciate hopping on again. Zach's article is out this morning. Yesterday morning when this drops, flight plans out. Zach's going on his honeymoon. Everyone Venmo Zach for some beers and some nice food. And we'll have you back on, obviously, and me and you will see each other over the summer.
Sure, bro.